Welcome, everyone, to our Aging in Place Planning and Zoning 101 training. I'm Karen Williams, along with Jenny Troutman. We'll be walking you through the fundamentals of how planning and zoning work in DeKalb County, and most importantly, how they impact our ability to age in place in our communities. We have a lot of info to cover today, so let's get started. We would like to take a moment to acknowledge the many hands that made this training possible. First and foremost, the DeKalb County Department of Planning and Sustainability for the excellent training materials, feedback and guidance from Super District 6 Commissioner Ted Terry, Bonnie Davis, our Aging in Place advisor and the leader for the Super District 6 Aging in Place initiative, Miranda Rupke, Deputy Chief of Staff for Commissioner Ted Terry, Davis Fox, Super District 6 zoning consultant, and support from Adam Chappelle, Senior Planner with DeKalb County Department of Planning and Sustainability. Now, if you're hungry for more information, both the DeKalb 2050 Unified Plan and Municipal Code are available online for your review. And this presentation, as you know, is on our AI Aging in Place website. This training is designed specifically for aging in placers who want to understand and advocate for the policies that shape our housing options and neighborhoods. By the end of our time today, you will know the fundamentals of DeKalb's planning process, and you'll have the tools to effectively participate in DeKalb County's upcoming zoning update process. We'll focus on the process and tools today. In an upcoming session, the Aging in Place initiative will cover how to be an effective advocate. Building on year 2022, the 2025-2026 update process. The DeKalb 2050 Unified Plan is the county's comprehensive plan that coordinates land use and transportation planning through the year 2050. The plan concentrates higher density mixed use development in designated activity centers while preserving neighborhood character. The 2050 plan addresses 7 priority areas: housing, economic development, sustainability, health and wellness, retail, transportation, and equity. The upcoming partial update to the DeKalb 2050 Unified Plan builds on year 2022 progress. With the Aging in Place initiative, advocates now have a focused way to participate in shaping policies that affect our ability to age in our communities.
All right, so let's start with the comprehensive planning basics. Starting with the big picture, comprehensive planning is how we create a roadmap for our community's future. The next update for DeKalb County is due in October 2027. So, what is comprehensive planning? The comprehensive plan serves 5 key functions for our community. First, it's a long-term tool. We're planning 20 to 30 years ahead. Second, it's a legal requirement for every county and municipality in Georgia. Third, it's a policy framework. It guides day-to-day zoning and investment decisions. Fourth, it's community-driven, based on extensive public input like this group. And fifth, it's a foundation for action. Everything else flows from this plan. For aging in place advocates, this plan determines whether our neighbors will have the housing variety, walkability, and services that we need as we age. So why does DeKalb County have to update their comprehensive plan? This requirement actually works in our favor because it creates regular opportunities for community input and ensures plans stay current with changing demographics and needs. And what happens if we don't comply? This slide shows the consequences of not maintaining an updated plan. Without compliance, no state funding is available for infrastructure. No roadwork permits will be issued by GDOT, the Georgia Department of Transportation. And there are no police radar permits, for example. So as you can see, the stakes are high. The county literally cannot operate effectively without an approved plan. This gives us leverage as advocates. Our input during plan updates carries real weight because the county must maintain these plans to function. So when you look at the comprehensive planning administration, it helps us to understand who's involved so we know where to direct our advocacy efforts. At the state level, the Georgia Department of Community Affairs sets the requirements and reviews for compliance. Then at the county level, the Board of Commissioners adopts the plan. That's our elected officials. The Planning Commission reviews and recommends the plan. Planning and Sustainability Department develops the plan. And a shout out that DeKalb County recently welcomed a chief housing officer, Alan Ferguson, who has already a chief development officer, Jacob Vallow. Then at the third level, at the community involvement level, this is where we come in. We have public meetings and workshops, stakeholder committees, online surveys and feedback, and community councils, which is, by the way, a key entry point for aging in place advocates. These community councils are particularly important because they provide neighborhood level input that feeds directly into the planning process. The comprehensive plan elements are 6 key elements that state law requires comprehensive plans to address. For aging in place, let's pay special attention to 3 of them. Land use and development, where can different types of housing be built? Housing, what variety of housing types and price points are planned? And third, community health, wellness, and safety. Are we planning walkable, accessible communities? These elements directly impact whether we'll have housing options for different life stages, walkable access to services, transportation alternatives to driving, aging-friendly community design. So the comprehensive plan provides the vision for DeKalb County's future. It's both aspirational and practical, defining where quality investment should occur while protecting existing single-family neighborhoods. There are 4 elements. You see in the upper left, vision. The comprehensive plan provides the vision for how DeKalb County wants to look in the future. Below that is policy. This is a policy document that guides development and growth in DeKalb County. In the upper right, investment. The plan defines where public and private investment should be focused to strengthen communities while promoting sustainable economic growth. And below that, roadmap. The plan provides a roadmap for the county's future while protecting single-family neighborhoods. This document will guide development and growth decisions for the next 20 plus years. That's why your input during updates is so crucial. We're literally shaping the communities where we'll age.
Here's how communities actually shape these plans. The process typically takes 12 to 18 months with multiple input opportunities. The first being public input. There are stakeholder meetings, public workshops, online surveys. The planning staff analyze existing conditions and evaluate policies in the research and analysis phase. And finally, the research leads to staff recommendations and a draft of the findings. The process is happening right now for the 2027 update. The more aging in place advocates participate, the more our needs will be reflected in the final plan. Policy recommendations often address exactly the issues we aging in placers care about, such as create housing affordability advisory committee, update zoning code to support new housing types like ADUs, accessory dwelling units, partner with nonprofits to preserve affordable housing, coordinate with regional transportation agencies, recommend that a percentage of new residential units meet enhanced accessibility standards. These recommendations become the blueprint for implementation. When we advocate effectively during the planning process, we can get aging-friendly policies written into the official plan. The 2027 Comprehensive Plan Update will build on year 2022 progress and focus on three key areas. One, future land use, refining where different types of development can occur. Two, activity center updates, updating designated growth areas. And three, small area plans, detailed plans for walkable residential areas and character areas. This is our opportunity to influence these updates with aging in place priorities. Several trends are driving the need for updates. Our population is aging, and that's changing our county's character. The market is demanding more diverse housing types, like missing middle housing, like duplexes, triplexes, and cottage courts. The county is approaching build out, so there's limited space for new development. Infill and redevelopment is needed to support continued growth. Some activity centers haven't grown as expected. For aging in place, these trends create both challenges and opportunities. We need to ensure that new housing types serve aging needs and that activity centers include aging-friendly amenities.
Activity centers are key to aging in place because they're where we want concentrated, walkable development with services. Here is a picture of the I-20 overlay. It adds special requirements for development along the I-20 corridor to manage traffic impacts, design standards, and economic development goals that wouldn't apply to the broader base zoning districts. This is important because activity centers should be where we can find housing alternatives and walkable access to services as we age. Small area plans are one of our most powerful tools. They will help us participate in the planning process more effectively. They guide development at a much more detailed level. They address specific community identified issues. And they identify specific policies to manage growth. Where there's a small area plan process in your neighborhood, that's a prime opportunity to advocate for aging-friendly features like diverse housing types, walkability, and access to these services. Now let's shift from long-range planning to current planning, also known as zoning. If comprehensive planning is the vision, zoning is the implementation tool. And understanding the difference is crucial. Long-range planning is the comprehensive plan with a 20 to 30-year vision. It's updated every 5 years. It provides the foundation for zoning decisions, and it creates the future land use map. Current planning are short-term projects, generally less than 5 years. Zoning ordinance is the actual rules, and other implementation tools like sign ordinances are how you make it happen. Think of planning as setting the destination and zoning as building the road to get there.
Understanding,
So what is
understand,
zoning?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. What is zoning? Zoning divides the community into districts that regulate land use and development intensity. It's based on the government's needs to protect public health, safety, and welfare. The key aspects are it's a legal tool with constitutional protections. Secondly, it's a policy and regulatory tool for infrastructure and development standards with a process and permitting system for managing development. For aging in place, zoning determines what types of housings can be built where and what design standards they must meet. Zoning versus building codes. This distinction is important for aging in place advocates. Zoning covers how buildings relate to sites and neighborhoods. That is land use and building placement, building form and design standards, and site design, including parking and landscaping. Building codes, on the other hand, are internal building features, and they cover things like structural safety requirements, accessibility features like door widths and grab rails, Americans with disability compliance, ADA compliance, and fire safety systems. When we're advocating for aging-friendly communities, we are usually talking about zoning issues, not building codes. And zoning regulations include many aspects that affect aging in place. Lot size and coverage, for example, affect housing affordability. Building height and setbacks, that affects your neighborhood character. Unit sizes and density limits, those affect housing options and housing variety. The parking requirements, and you'll hear me say parking requirements several times in this presentation, are important because they affect housing costs and walkability. And the design standards, they affect accessibility and livability. And each of these can either support or hinder aging in place, depending on how they're written. And we'll be covering these in more depth as we walk through the Muni Code articles. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you, Jenny. Understanding the zoning administration structure helps us know where to direct our advocacy. The legislative body is the Board of Commissioners. They make final decisions. Planning Commission, they review applications and make recommendations. Community councils, which there are 5, provide neighborhood input. Zoning Board of Appeals handles waivers or variances. The planning staff develops recommendations. They provide the professional basis for decision making. The following processes are our entry points for participation. Historic Preservation Commission, with their certificate of appropriateness, administrative variances and waivers, special land use permits, often referred to as SLUPs. Note, community councils are particularly important for aging in place advocates because they provide direct neighborhood input. Zoning directly impacts our ability to age in place. We should ask questions like, does zoning allow accessory dwelling units, ADUs, smaller homes or cottages that work better for aging? This addresses housing types. What are the parking requirements? There's that parking again, Jenny.
Mhm.
Because we know that high parking requirements increase housing costs. Does the proposed zoning create walkable or car-dependent neighborhoods? This looks like neighborhood design. What services and amenities are allowed nearby? Car washes versus grocery stores, etc. Access to services. The diagram shows how zoning can create neighborhoods with enhanced open space, but zoning can also allow or prevent diverse housing types and walkable access to amenities as well. The zoning ordinance has several key components. Let's take a look at a zoning map. Zoning map shows base zoning districts. Yellow is low density residential for single family homes. Orange is mid to high density residential, apartments, townhomes, and the like. Red denotes commercial or business, and green indicates open space and parks. Other elements, overlay districts for special requirements, mixed use districts like live work, use tables showing what's allowed and where. Zoning conditions can be placed on specific properties. Understanding these elements helps us navigate and identify opportunities for aging friendly changes.
So
Article
let, I'm sorry. So let's do a live demonstration of MuniCode. This is a critical skill for aging in place advocates. MuniCode is the official online repository of DeKalb County's legal codes and ordinances, including all zoning regulations. And I'm going to pause it for just a second here. Wow. So what you're seeing now is DeKalb County's MuniCode. And key sections for aging in place under Chapter 27, you find zoning. And some of the key aging in place um, articles are Section 4. You'll see Article 4 use regulations. So we're just going to click on use regulations. And that will take us to the use regulations. And then if we go, you can either scroll down, and Karen will be explaining what this table is in a few minutes, or we can click in the table of contents here and go to section 27 or section 4.2.3 and look at accessory dwelling units. This is an ADU, and this section of the zoning code tells us, of the Muni Code, tells us requirements, restrictions, and the approval process for ADUs. Another one that is of key interest to aging in placers, and as you can see, there's a lot of them here, is under section 5.7.9. So we're going to go to Article 5. We're going to go to 5.7, which is building form and configuration standards. And then we're going to go within that down to section 9. I'm scrolling through so that you can see how comprehensive this is. When you get to section 9, you'll find single family cottage development. This is small scale housing clusters and design standards that that can support aging in place. So, given that you have a sense of the Municode now, let's take a look at what's currently allowed and what barriers might exist. Just go back here to our slides. So let's analyze zoning through an aging in place lens. There are common barriers, such as minimum lot sizes that are too large, increasing housing costs, right? Lots of land means a higher housing cost. Excessive parking requirements, which increases costs and reduces walkability. Height and density restrictions limit housing variety, and prohibited housing types prevent things like the ADUs that we just looked at and cottages. Setbacks and buffer requirements create car-oriented design, and most people want walkable neighborhoods these days. So, what are some of the opportunities you see over here in the upper right? Well, expanding accessory dwelling unit provisions because they can be expanded. Looking at mixed use districts, which allows housing near services, and transit oriented development, reducing car dependency, cottage development options for smaller, more affordable homes, and finally, flexibility in parking standards, because parking standards are something under zoning that can be reduced. So when you think of this from an analysis perspective, if you look at the bottom of this slide, here are the 4 key questions to ask. Does this regulation make housing more expensive? Does it limit housing variety for different life stages? Does it support or hinder walkable neighborhoods? Are there existing provisions we can build upon? And from that, you come into the idea of proposing zoning code changes. So here's your roadmap from identifying problems to proposing solutions. Step 1 in the blue, identify the problem. For example, parking requirements make ADUs too expensive to build. Step 2, research solutions. Look at what other counties have done successfully. Step 3, draft specific language. For example, reduce parking required for ADUs from 2 spaces to 1 space. And step 4, consider implementation. What are the practical impacts and timeline? And that brings us to a series of examples for aging in place proposals. Parking, reduce minimums for senior housing and ADUs. Density, expand cottage courts to more residential zones. Accessibility, streamline approval for accessibility modifications. And services, allow small scale commercial like a coffee shop or a beauty salon in residential areas. Remember, be specific, research backed, and implementation focused. Vague suggestions in a meeting like, we want more affordable housing, are way less effective than concrete regulatory changes.
Now let's get an understanding of the zoning code. Article 4 of the zoning code governs use regulations. It tells us what activities can happen where. This is fundamental to aging in place because it determines what types of housing and services can be located in different areas. What is a use table? It's a permission chart that tells you what activities are allowed in each type of neighborhood or area. Think of a use table um, just like just like your HOA might allow gardens but prohibit factories in your yard. Zoning creates rules about what can be built where. The use tables makes these rules clear and consistent across the county. Okay. Um, Here's how it works in practice. The table shows that single-family homes are permitted in residential zones. Coffee shops go in commercial, and ADUs require special permits in residential areas. Understanding these designations helps you navigate what's allowed. P means permitted, allowed automatically with regular permits. SP, special permit, requires special approval process. And a dash, that particular use is prohibited in that zone. Understanding these designations helps you identify where housing types for aging in place are currently allowed and where they might need to be added.
Is this still you, Karen, or is this me?
I think that's you. I don't have I'm at setbacks.
Okay. Article 5 controls how buildings look and how they relate to the street and neighboring properties. This affects the walkability and accessibility of our neighborhoods. Are you?
Oh, it's me. My apologies. All right, setbacks are the required minimum distances between buildings and property lines. Large setbacks can create car-oriented environments that are less walkable for aging residents. Understanding setback requirements helps us advocate for more pedestrian-friendly neighborhood design. These standards determine fences and screening, garage placement, exterior materials, overall site layout. These rules shape whether neighborhoods feel walkable and accessible or car oriented and isolated. Now it's you, Jenny.
Okay, thank you. So transition, can I start again? Transitional buffers. These are the landscaped areas that provide screening between different land uses. So the image that you see there shows different buffer classes from A, which is minimal on the left, to E, which is extensive. This one is 100 feet on the right. For aging in place, buffers can protect residential areas from incompatible uses, create pleasant walking environments, but they can also separate us from services we need. Why this matters for aging in place? Large buffers around a commercial district can turn a walkable 2-block trip to the pharmacy into an unwalkable 4-block detour around landscaping. And that's especially challenging for seniors with mobility limitations. So understanding buffer requirements helps us advocate for appropriate transitions that protect neighborhoods while allowing convenient access to services. Here we go, parking. These regulations are crucial for aging in place because they directly affect housing costs and walkability. Parking requirements have 4 major impacts on aging in place. As we've discussed before, housing costs. More parking equals higher construction costs and higher maintenance costs. Housing variety is the second one. Strict parking rules can prevent ADUs in smaller homes or cottage courts. Third, walkability. Excessive parking creates car-focused rather than pedestrian-friendly neighborhoods. And 4, affordability. Parking requirements increase costs for both housing and local businesses. Many aging residents would prefer to trade parking costs for lower housing costs, especially if they live in walkable areas with good transit access. Current parking requirements often prevent this choice. This is one of the most impactful areas where aging in place advocates can push for changes, reducing parking minimums, especially for senior housing and ADUs.
Text amendments are changes to the zoning code language. Recent examples in DeKalb County include updates to lot coverage rules, overlay districts, and regulations for short-term rentals. Understanding the text amendment process is important because this is how we can get aging-friendly changes written into the code. Here are recent text amendments that show the types of changes possible. Maximum lot coverage, which happened in 2023, it affects housing affordability. Overlay district updates affect neighborhood character. SLUP criteria changes affect approval processes, and short-term rental regulations affect housing availability. Note the short-term rentals regulations were recently adopted. This could be an area where aging in place advocates weigh in on how short-term rentals affect housing availability and, in some instances, affordability. Let's now talk about how zoning codes shape what actually gets built in our communities. Development is shaped by three layers of standards. One, zoning district standards set basic rules for each zone. Two, overlay district standards, additional requirements for special areas like distinct neighborhoods. And three, historic preservation guidelines, rules for historic areas. Understanding this hierarchy helps us know which standards to target for changes that support aging in place.
The zoning code also affects numerous aspects of our daily lives by controlling what gets built in our communities. So if you look at the list here, we have 9 different aspects that are controlled: the size of housings, what houses look like, size of yards, the amount of commercial development, sidewalk requirements, distances to stores and services, trees and parking lots, and the number of parking spaces. The hidden outcomes of this include development costs and who gets excluded from neighborhoods. Zoning can also determine where people can open businesses, how they operate, and what streets look and feel like. So there are outcome-driven changes, and rather than getting lost in the technical details, let's keep our focus on those, the outcomes that we want to achieve. Things like decreasing traffic through better design, increasing the housing supply and variety, decreasing the cost of living, making the code easier to understand, increasing the diversity of housing prices, high and low prices and types of housing, and increasing gathering spots and community spaces. These outcomes, all of these outcomes, align with aging in place goals. When advocating for zoning changes, always connect back to these community benefits.
Okay, here's how to stay connected with Commissioner Terry's office for ongoing zoning and planning issues. Commissioner Terry's office is a key ally in advancing aging in place priorities through the planning and zoning process. Thank you for your commitment to creating aging-friendly communities in DeKalb County. Let's recap your next steps. Immediate actions. Bookmark the MuniCode website and practice navigating to ADU and cottage development sections. Identify one zoning barrier in your neighborhood that affects aging in place. Connect with your community council representative. Sign up for updates on the 2027 Comprehensive Plan Update ongoing engagement. Ongoing engagement is to attend commission meetings, planning commission meetings with aging related items on the agenda. Participate in small area planning processes in your neighborhood. Build relationship with our aging in place advocates. And questions to reflect on: what zoning changes would make the biggest difference for aging in place in your neighborhood? How can we work together to make our voice heard during the upcoming zoning update? Your expertise as community members combined with this technical knowledge makes you powerful advocates for aging in place communities. The zoning update process starting this year, 2025, is our opportunity to make real change.